And now we will have 3 short presentations by architects and engineers who have been involved with this subject. I'm going to invite first Mike Taylor. Mike Taylor is a senior partner with Hopkins Architects, who've done some beautiful sports buildings. And they started, my knowledge of them, they carried out the Lord's the Mound stand at Lord's, which we saw today being used for archery. And afterwards, of course, it's the velodrome that is their main achievement. So, Mike, we look forward now to hearing from you. We've got 5 minutes, as you know.
Thank you very much. I'll stay sitting down so you can see the screen. We tried to rethink how you do a sports building with this amazing opportunity to design a 6,000-seat velodrome. GB is fantastic at cycling, so it's a big challenge. And we took our inspiration from the bicycle. What an amazing piece of engineering. It had everything we thought architecture and engineering and design should have. It's efficient, it's highly sustainable, it lasts a long time, it keeps you fit. If we could emulate that through our approach of thinking about components, about thinking about everything being refined, and every single thing on that bike is doing a job, it's all working very hard. If it's not working hard, it's not there. Could we take that same approach and use it to inspire a building? And where would that take us? We knew at the same time we had to produce basically the best velodrome in the world. We needed the fastest track, and we looked at everything we could do to achieve that. So we had the best possible track geometry. We had Ron Webb doing the track. We looked at the crowd, the atmosphere, about wrapping the spectators all the way around the track to improve the sound, the acoustics, which we monitored very closely. Anyone that was in there will have heard the phenomenal din of the noise, and that was a big encouragement for the riders. We worked very closely with Chris Hoy on the detail of all of that. We knew about temperature, so for anyone in there that was rather warm, that was all about thinning the air down, which allows the cyclists to go faster. And we managed to achieve 10 world records and 24 Olympic records in the Games, which was incredible. So hopefully we've got a good velodrome there. But underneath that wooden roof is quite a sophisticated engineering story. That whole structure is held up by cables that are just 36 millimeters in diameter, like the size of a rope. They span 130 meters. And what that allowed us to do was take out about 1,000 tons of steel from the roof, which is money, is carbon. It was saved 2 months on the construction program, saved a considerable amount of money, and that whole roof went up without a single piece of scaffolding. So very efficient, very quick, and very safe. But we had this motto when we were working, which was actually the Games is a short interval of time, fantastic fun, but really this building should be there for 50, 100 years afterwards. So we thought that the Games should be thought of as a housewarming party, and we should be more concerned about the house than the party. And so the building really was conceived for afterwards. And actually in the Games, they blacked out the roof lights and blacked out the glazing, and because the cameramen preferred it that way for the Games. But it was the right thing to do. This building has the same amount of insulation as a Scandinavian house. It has daylight coming inside. You'll be able to train in there afterwards on a very low budget, without the lights on, without heating. And you can turn up all of those things for a big event. So it was this dual use of making it work for the Games, but making it very, very cheap to operate in Legacy. And we actually designed the whole of the infrastructure of the park before we designed the building. So there's going to be a 1-mile road circuit for the public to ride on. There's the BMX will be retained just to the back of the velodrome. We have 6.5 kilometers of mountain biking all woven into the park, and the velodrome in the middle. And very importantly, we made a ring of glass which connects the inside and outside of the velodrome. So it will be a real legacy in that the public can walk in the park up to that glass, look in and see the top athletes riding on the track and see the cycling outside. So as a cyclist, we're very excited about this. Here's the final building. The double curvature of the roof we needed for the cable net gave the name the Pringle, and about which we can do nothing. Anyway, we're very proud of it, and hopefully I'm underneath my finishing time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, this is a very difficult session to chair, in the sense that I'm sure you must be bursting to ask a lot of questions. And I think we will have time afterwards to ask some questions, but also I think all our panel are going to remain afterwards, so you can maybe be sure that you can buttonhole them afterwards and pick up any points that they've made that you haven't had answered to you. So now we want to move on to Jim Burridge. Jim Burridge is a director of Arup, one of the world's biggest civil engineering and structural engineering firms, and well equipped to answer any questions and to tell us something about sustainability and the deliverability in terms of environmental care with sports buildings. Jim.
Okay, well...
Do you want to sit there, or do you want to stand here? What should you prefer?
No, it's okay. Well, we'll carry on with the kind of less formal. One of the feelings that I have about any Olympic event or any major spectacle like this is you need ambition at the beginning. And I think the minister articulated that ambition going back several years now. So what is that ambition? What do you want to achieve out of it? What is it? Is it something for the country? Is it something for the sportsmen? Is it something for the city? Or is it everything that goes with that? And I think London probably achieved most of those things. It probably hasn't done everything that it would have liked to have done, but it did a lot. And just some of the pictures there, one of the things that you don't necessarily associate with the London Games are some of the infrastructure components. The huge Channel Tunnel rail link connection to St Pancras. St Pancras was a hub for high-speed link from the city out to the Olympic site. It moved thousands and thousands of people. It was using a facility that we were building to connect ourselves to Europe and how we integrated that with the Games. So there's the heavy end of infrastructure that goes with a major sports investment. But then at the end of the day, what do you want as your legacy for the people? So Tom articulated the park and how that would be a long-term legacy arrangement. So the ambition was for people, it was for infrastructure for the future, it was for the city. So, and how do you deliver ambition? I feel that ambition needs to be more than just what we did last week, what we did last year. It needs to be about looking to the future. What will the future demand of us next? How does UK PLC compete in the world next? How do we as individuals compete in our businesses and the things that we do? So just taking some examples of innovation. Most of these are obviously past now because they wouldn't be here as pictures otherwise, but taking the first one, the Allianz Arena, was one of the first arenas that really looked at the outside of the building and changing the outside of the building to be an advertisement for what went on inside. And I think, you know, Tom's exposition of the Olympic Stadium in London took that onto another level by the way it was lit and the way it was moved, both inside and outside. So innovation in how we use both inside and outside of venues for the future, I think, will continue to evolve. And then we have energy. Energy is one of those things that you know, we just take so much for granted these days. It moves us, it cools us, it heats us, it feeds us, it waters us. And how we look at energy for the future, I think, will become a bigger and bigger issue. And particularly in climates where it's not as benign as it is in the UK. So energy will move on and move forward. Transport, obviously a major issue for London. We all had the warnings about, you know, prepare to go to work early, prepare to come home early, maybe you should stay and work at home, all those kind of things. And this was some analysis we did of London prior to the event, looking at travel times, depending on where you were, where stations were, and how that might affect us. So it was something that was looked at in detail. And when you've got a busy, complicated city, looking at how you move people and shift people around in the most efficient way, but also in a way that accommodates the Games and maybe gives you that legacy benefit afterwards, is something that I think will evolve much more for the future. So temporary sports facilities, Tom's done temporary sports facilities, so I'm not going to go too much into those. But one of the things that I would like to say is that in more extreme climates, and here I'm thinking about the Middle East and its ambitions to hold sporting events in the future, energy will become a particular issue for some of those people, and how can we do temporary energy, how can we do permanent energy, and how can we deal with those sorts of things. High-speed mass transit, moving people around, as I've already said, you know, what we've got now with a connection to Paris and further on into Europe has given us a great benefit for the future. And I'm sure we'll see more high-speed links, as been talked about in the press, traveling through the UK. So integrating these things with an event such as the Olympics, because the Olympics gives them so much of a focus. So legacy. So what did we achieve in the end? We're not quite at the end at the moment. The picture is intentionally fuzzy because it's just a picture of what might be the end. I think we're all pretty clear about what the end hopes to be, and over the next couple of years now, we'll see that delivered. But I'm hoping that, as Tom explained, we've got a number of venues there which will remain for elite athletes. I think it's important for the UK to have really top-class venues within the country for training. You know, there's been quite a bit of press about, you know, the aquatics. You know, do we need such an expensive swimming pool? But actually, if you're going to compete at the top end of sport and have the recognition of your athletes, I think you need something that's special. You know, the velodrome, the aquatic centre, and hopefully the legacy athletics venue will provide that focus. And I think the other thing I hope that comes out of this is that we have a place for recreation coming out of the London Park, in that, you know, we've got the cycling both for amateurs and for the professionals. We've got places for people in the community to be a part of, and not just in London. I'm hoping that some of the temporary venues, see parts of those temporary venues eventually go outside London to other locations. So legacy, a lot of things. And then just looking, this is looking a long way into the future. We talked about energy. I think energy will become a bigger and bigger driver for all of us, and how we drive that more efficiently. I don't have any magic answers for the UK, but there are some other parts of the world which I think have some answers which we may begin to use with time. Transport planning and how that goes. We've got some countries looking to host the future Olympics now, which need to look closely at how they transport plan. We're all familiar, and we take for granted the London tube system, and urbanisation across the world will demand more and more mass transit arrangements. So how do we plan for that, and can the Olympics be used as a focus for delivering those sorts of things? Event and city planning, I think they need to overlay with each other. We can see how London began that process by taking existing facilities, existing buildings, but using those as a catalyst to move forward. Infrastructure planning, I've talked about that already, but it has to be there for the future, and it has to be part of a sustainable future. And the one that I don't think anybody's really tackled yet, there are talks about tackling this for the future, is are we going to see food planning begin to enter our vocabulary? We've talked about energy and transport and all those kind of more obvious things, but maybe delivering venues for food, maybe delivering our city planning such that food enters that vocabulary. Who knows? I'll leave that for others to think about.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Jim, thank you for that. You've raised so many questions, which I hope we'll be able to take up. You've widened the ambition of this seminar, how to deliver ambition, innovation, and energy, and now food. I mean, these are really interesting subjects to be talking about today in 5 minutes. Thank you. And now Mike Hall. Mike Hall's a partner with FaulknerBrowns. FaulknerBrowns are a firm who've displayed excellence in sports building design over many, many years. They've won many awards with the IAKS IOC competitions that have been held, many medals won. And we hope, Mike, that you'll win another medal today by talking to us for 5 minutes about your subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Grant. Hopefully my message is a very simple one, really. Tom has already talked about the importance of getting the balance of permanent and temporary facilities right in terms of games planning. But I really want to focus on those permanent venues where typically with a permanent venue, the games time represents less than 0.5% of the life of that building. So it's really, really important, and Mike's already touched upon it with the sort of house party metaphor, is getting the building right for a wider range of uses and really judging that building over a longer period of time. And certainly with some of the experience that we've had, and Geraint's referred to that over a number of years, and two of the venues that we've been involved in for Olympics at Lee Valley, the White Water Course, and down at Weymouth for the sailing, there's a number of kind of key pertinent lessons which we think are relevant for these permanent venues. The first key issue is really is the importance of training. Having high quality facilities for our athletes, able-bodied and disabled athletes, is really, really vitally important. With our history of facilities throughout the UK, we're aware of at least 10 of those facilities have been used by overseas teams in the UK. And they relate to a number of universities, local authorities, or various sports institutes and governing bodies getting together. And these have provided high quality, international standards, but with excellence of support for those athletes have been really, really vital aspects of those. So really training is a vital aspect. We're particularly pleased that to date we're aware that of about half of the gold medalists have been training in some of our facilities that we've been involved in. Manchester Velodrome and Sheffield EIS have particularly been bases for a number of GB athletes. I think the second key point I want to get across is really over the longer time frame, the importance of community usage. And really for a number of reasons. Certainly one of the legacy ambitions set out by SEBCO was getting more people engaged in sporting activity. And so clearly we need these permanent venues to be welcoming, to be used by a large cross-section of the public that are going to engage in healthier lifestyles. I think the other factor is that increasingly one of the metrics that we're using in terms of carbon is carbon per visit. So every time we're visiting, somebody is visiting a facility, is what is their kind of carbon footprint for that actual visit. And having a larger number of throughput is a key part of that equation. And certainly at the Lee Valley Canoe Centre, it was the only facility that's actually had a kind of pre-legacy that's actually been open to the public prior to games time and has been very, very successful. It's a facility that's well integrated into its park setting. And not just the 30,000 people that have been using the course, but it's the gearing of other users. So there's 120,000 people have enjoyed the park, have been walking, have been cycling, and engaging with the activities that have been taking place in that park. So community use, really, really essential. But clearly the events themselves are an important part of what we're really about. And they're the kind of starting point. And in addition to the two Olympic events that we've been involved in the last 2 years, we've had 2 World Championship venues, one an aquatic centre in Dubai, and a velodrome in Holland, which has held UCI track cycling championships. And I guess one of the key things that's common to both is an attitude to flexibility, that if we're providing a legacy of permanent seating, how can we make those venues, those seating bowls, be used for other activities? And certainly the Dubai Aquatic Centre, we very much took a view that whilst it had to provide 15,000 spectator capacity, and it had a 50-metre pool and a diving pool, we very much saw that as an arena venue that could be converted. We could drain the water out, we could put a floor over, and that could be used for dry sport events such as basketball. So really trying to make that venue work very, very hard. And in a similar way, our multi-sport venue at Apeldoorn in Holland, it's a kind of category A facility, not just for track cycling in Holland, but also for athletics and volleyball. So making that facility, which has excellent hospitality facilities, the inside of the track can be used for 200 meters athletics and other training. It's getting the most out of these facilities. So really, in summary, and the simple message that I'd set out at the beginning is that Clearly the focus, or the large part of the focus, is about the ability to deliver high-quality architecture and high-quality events. But really, if we're going to look to true legacy of these facilities and look at carbon and look at regeneration, we need to engage with community use and the training, and these things are all interrelated and help improve all aspects of that sustainable picture. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for keeping to time. Mike, thank you very much for raising more topics for us to consider. We raised the point about training. Jim had referred to relaxation. So did you. Legacy. All of these things come into the wider picture of what we can learn from London, where we go from London, and how we can build on the future. So we now have time for just a few questions. I was going to ask a question, but as you've got your hand up, sir, and it's very difficult to ask a single question for all of these people, we ask you to deliver your question.
Okay, I'm Alan Hurdle, Managing Director of Flacked Woods Company. We supply ventilation equipment, and we supplied both energy recovery and fire safety smoke removal equipment to most, if not all, of the stadiums that have been discussed and shown today. My question to the panel is, what advice can they give, given that we have coming up in Brazil the World Cup and the Olympics? So how do we go about convincing architects, consultants and designers in Brazil to take British products? Because for me, this is what we've achieved. I'm looking for what we can do for tomorrow. How do we go about convincing these Brazilian ones, given that they have nearly every single natural resource in their country and that energy is not high on their agenda? So what's their advice? Thank you very much.
Now, it's quite difficult for me to say, well, one of these people could answer that question, and I can either do the opposite, and that's say they've all got to answer it. So we're going to ask you all to answer that question with 2 sentences or so each, a very brief point. Tom.
Goodness, what a brief. I think the area of sustainability and environmental design is the area to target. You rightly say that Brazil has many of the things they need, but I think these are skill sets that London has developed and British companies are well placed to provide.
Good.
If you look at the temperature in Brazil, interestingly, at the time of the games, it's not that different from London. So you could put on a games with temporary facilities similar to the ones we've looked at today. For the rest of the year, you have to rewrite the rule book because the temperatures and humidity change drastically. That's all I'll say.
Mike.
I think very much in tune with the seminar today. I think this is about kind of expertise that's looking at the kind of bigger picture. And, this has been a very, very successful games with a lot of expertise that's been involved in that. And, hopefully some of that will be transferred across to Rio.
Jim.
I think my view is demonstrate value. Show that you have something that is needed, perhaps others don't have, and that value and expertise will be sought then. If you don't have that, then that leaves a question.
Thank you very much. Do we have another question? If so, I'm just going to ask the question I was going to ask the panel. Each of you will have to answer it. We've learned from London. London, in a way, had an easy job in the sense that the IOC demands that you pay attention to the environment. It makes the environment the third part of its cultural declarations: sport, culture, environment. And then London says we will produce the most environmentally friendly, the most successful sustainable games ever, which by and large I think we have done. But the next question is, when you don't have a client like that, how easy is it for clients to think that sustainability and environmental considerations are important and are willing to pay for them? Tom.
Probably to pick up on Jim's last comment about demonstrating value, what is the value in the environmental design? So is it a reduction in materials, which I think we can demonstrate? Is it an improvement in the spectator experience? Those are the sort of things that you have to demonstrate, I think, to convince a client that taking these measures seriously is important.
I think the key issue you're raising, Aaron, is capital cost versus lifetime cost. And it is always very difficult to get people to invest in lifetime cost. Undoubtedly, it has benefits if you can, but people have a short-term view. what we did on the velodrome was a good example there of taking this model of efficiency and really pushing it. And actually, we were pushed hard on cost, we were pushed hard on sustainability, and we tried to use that as an inspiration, if you like, to do more with the architecture and the engineering. So less can be more if you're given time to think about it.
I think the kind of technology is one part of the debate, but as I was trying to make out earlier on in my short piece, it's about persuading clients about the kind of longer-term use of these facilities, and if the investment enables more people to be engaged in those facilities and the wider benefits and added value through community use and training, those are normally very visible, tangible benefits that we can persuade clients about the design decisions we're making. Okay.
Two things. One is the development of ideas and thoughts that deliver value at the end of the day. I think sustainability in its broader sense doesn't need to cost money. I think you could put it up there as a challenge to say, are the expectations that we have at the outset the right ones? Should we rewrite things? Should we look at things to achieve a legacy benefit out of sustainability that both gives us what we want from sustainability but doesn't cost any more? And I think that's probably the role of some of us to articulate that to our clients.
Thank you very much. Is there one more burning question? This will have to be burning, sir, and I hope it's going to be short. We'll take the gentleman behind you. I'm awfully sorry. Sir. No, I meant the gentleman. I'm awfully sorry. It means...
Yes, good morning.
I've got the signal, only one question, so I'm awfully sorry about that.
Good morning. Yeah, I'm not involved in any of the architecture stuff, but I had done some bidding with the Olympic authorities for the Games. And what would be interesting for me to know is what's the business model transpired for you guys? Because we know that the authorities, the LOCOG and the ODA, were putting a lot of pressure on costs. But did you overall make a profit on the work you've done? Because we know there's a lot of pressure. Or was it like we've achieved some great things, we've got some good showcase, and now we're going to go and exploit that further forward? So it'd be sort of quite a nice candid review, but have we really made a lot of money out of this, or is it just more of a showcase?
Okay, thank you. I will do the same technique. We'll ask them all to answer it, but to save Tom, we'll now start with you, Jim, at your end.
I'll answer it with the point that we're still in business.
That's it? Thank you. Mike.
I think it's fair to say we haven't made a huge amount of money out of this process, but I think in terms of engaging with an Olympic Games has been a showcase, and there are demonstrable opportunities that are coming about as a result of it.
Yeah, I'd say we certainly washed our face on that project. Most of our time was probably spent outside paid hours. We did lots of nights, weekends. The passion of the whole team, not just the architects, was unbelievable. And I think, our pride in that project extends right across to the contractors and everyone. So in one way, we gave our bit for our Olympics and country, and we're all very proud of that. The positive for us is that we've had about 200 media requests from 65 countries in the last 2 months, so good for business.
Tom.
Yeah, I'd echo everything Mike said. It's a very familiar story. Hopefully we provided value for money, I think, right across the teams. And those of you who've been to the venues, hopefully that will be the feeling you've had.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, the one thing that hasn't been said, of course, is how do the superb facilities that we have heard about today influence performance? And you have to say that the performance of athletics and Paralympics in the stadium, the performance of the velodrome, the performance of the canoe slalom, all of these facilities have not only performed well in terms of sustainability and being built on time, but also in terms of what they've encouraged from the athletes to produce in terms of results.